Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. Want to improve your organization's customer service? Looking for insider tips to knock your customer socks off? Then you're in the right place. Here's your host, Yanique Grant.
Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. On today's episode, our guest is Jimi Gibson. Jimi Gibson is VP of Brand Communication at Thrive Internet Marketing Agency, a full-service digital marketing agency with 160 employees and over 20 years helping businesses grow online. He specializes in AI search optimization and helps companies transition from traditional SEO to visibility in AI-powered search results. A TEDx speaker, TEDx coach, and Forbes contributor, Jimi has appeared on more than 70 podcasts discussing how AI is fundamentally changing how businesses get discovered online. His expertise lies at the interest of personal branding and emerging search technology, helping business owners understand why the companies that will thrive in AI search are those led by visible, citable authorities. Before joining the agency world, Jimi had a career as a professional magician, performing at venues including MGM Grand and operating his own theater. That background in audience engagement and storytelling now informs his approach to helping businesses stand out in an increasingly crowded digital landscape. So, without further delay, sit back, plug your earphones in, and let's jump right into this conversation with Jimi. Welcome, Jimi.
Hi, Yanique. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. All right, Jimi, we always like to give our guests an opportunity to share a little bit about their journey. So, in your own words, could you share with our audience a little bit about how you got from where you were to where you are today? I actually find quite fascinating the fact that you are a magician. I'd love to hear about that.
Sure. It's a great conversation starter and a good place for us to start. It's not the typical path to get into digital marketing. Gosh, Yannick, I was looking through some boxes a few years ago and I pulled out this membership card that said Merlin's Mail Order Magic Club. And I flipped the card over and I did some quick math. I was like 4 years old and I thought, wow, that's pretty young to get, interested in something like that. But I don't know what it was. It just stuck. And I would perform for backyard shows. If I could grab the neighbors, my friends' parents would hire me to do my friends' birthday parties. And I was making like $25 a show. And I thought I was a, big mogul at that point. And then in high school, I met a gentleman who was the account manager for an advertising agency that had an account with a Fortune 100 company, and they were looking for a promotional entertainer. And so for the next 16 years, I did shows for that company and got to understand what it meant to grab attention, to keep that attention, to keep the excitement going in all sorts of different venues and audiences. And, I got to hang out at the advertising agency a little bit and was fascinated with all the creative stuff that they were doing and being inquisitive. I asked a lot of questions and I thought, you know what, if there's a career that most mimics a magician, it would be a marketer, because you have to do the same thing, right? You have to capture attention, you have to elicit curiosity. There's some conversion that happens. And yeah, so at the time that I was doing magic, I was also starting out working in advertising agencies. I still ask a bunch of questions. I would always ask the owners, like, why are we doing this? What are they trying to achieve? And they were like, oh my gosh, Jimi, you go talk to the owner. And so I got to go talk to the owner. And so I worked my way up to creative director, and then I ran an agency. And I just found it fascinating that a business wants to grow and we have the ability to communicate what the business is about and what their unique offer is, whether it's a product or service. A lot of that is related to the customer experience. I know we'll get into that. I've been with Thrive Agency for the last 5 years and actually started with them to lead their strategy department. And then I led all the teams that did all the work. And now I get the opportunity to go out and tell the stories about what we've been doing over the last 20 years. And of course, AI is a big part of that. And yes, I still do magic shows and it still informs the way that I see a campaign or I see communication. And yeah, it's been fun.
All right, perfect. So, a big part of what you do at Thrive Internet Marketing Agency is to help businesses grow online. And as your bio mentioned, you specialize in AI search optimization. So, can you explain to our audience what is that and how does that differ from traditional SEO?
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot of confusion out there and things are moving very quickly. If you have tried, ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or something like that, it seems they get more powerful each and every day. And so
Mm-hmm.
traditional SEO is basically optimizing for keywords. And you would type something into Google and you would get a page with about 10 results. And that's the first page of Google, right? So there's like 10 blue links. And they were typically you would optimize for a page on the website. And so if it was a product page or a service page, you wanted that page to rank on that page one, hopefully number one. The crazy thing that's happened over the last year is 60% of those Google searches don't end in a click. So people aren't clicking through to a website. And you might think, whoa, that's crazy. How is that possible? Well, there's AI overviews, there's knowledge panels, there's things called rich snippets. Google, of course, has AI mode, and there's a lot of information on that page that provides information that might prevent you from thinking you need to visit the website. Now, the other
True.
thing that's happening is people are starting to use some of those large language models that I talked about earlier to do research and to figure out what product or service is best to meet their needs before they go to the website. And so all of this has really, if you think of the world of search as a big pizza, there's a lot of slices on that pizza now. And so it used to be the major piece of pizza was organic search. And, Gartner's done a study that this year, organic search is going to drop 25%, and by
Wow.
2028 drop by 50%. And so that traffic is getting fragmented. Now, I don't want this to be a doomsday, message, because there are other ways that people are going to be able to discover you. Number one, you should really focus on being visible to those large language models. And, we can get into some of that. That's a new sort of the new world of SEO. But the
Mm.
people who do that research on one of those tools and then eventually come to your website, they're already pre-sold. They already have done their research and they convert at 4.5 times the rate of a typical organic search. So there's a lot going on, and we're trying to hold our customers' hands and walk them through this process and keep up to date with all of the new things that are playing into all of this AI search. So, yeah, I would say that's the big picture, and happy to go into more detail with some of that if you'd like.
Perfect. So you mentioned that the way how people search has changed. People aren't necessarily going to Google, for example. It's funny you say that because when I think about how I search now, um, like I'm typically between Claude and ChatGPT,
Mm-hmm.
but I use Claude for more deep analytical research. And then I use ChatGPT for like surface stuff, like if I need a recipe for something, or I'm looking, on the procedure, let's say to renew my driver's license. But then if I'm looking to do, let's say, for example, I want a document analyzed and I would like insight on whether the pros and cons of the information that's from the report, I'll upload that into Claude, not ChatGPT, to get that done. And then I use Google now if I'm looking for somewhere, maybe to get an address or a telephone number, almost like a directory. And so when you were speaking just now, I was just thinking about how I operate as an
Mm-hmm.
individual. And I'm wondering if that is abnormal or is that pretty much a trend of everyone else?
Yeah, I would say it's shifting. The predominance of people doing product and service specific searches on these platforms is a little different. I would say it's growing. The behavior that you demonstrated is pretty typical. Claude has gotten a lot of press lately because of how amazing it is with a lot of the analysis that you're talking about. Perplexity is a very popular one. the interesting thing that when you do move into trying to find someone to help you uh, with whatever it is you're doing research on, most of
Mhm.
these models don't have links in there. And so then the behavior becomes, okay, I see the name of the company. Now I'm going to go back to Google and I'm going to search for the name of the company that I just saw. And so that causes a lot of headaches for the metrics people in the attribution of where that lead came from. And so a lot of that has become difficult now to understand the attribution. But I would say the big thing that's changed is a typical search in Google was about 5 to 6 words. A typical initial conversation with one of these large language models is about 32 words. So it's a lot more back and forth. And the structure of it is more question and answer. And so you're asking a question, you expect an answer. Most websites are not built that way. And so there's a need for people to update their websites. You may have heard of the acronym AEO, which is basically answer engine optimization. And so the behavior is right in the name, right? Answer engine. I want an answer to something. So there are some techniques that we help our clients with to restructure the way that they present data. But yeah, I would say just like you, there are people that have their favorite. Obviously, ChatGPT has the most users, but it's getting leapfrogged a lot by some of these other tools, and people tend to stick with what they know. But then, if a friend or somebody recommends, you probably had, or maybe you did some research and you said, "Oh, there's a lot of chatter about Claude. I'm going to give it a try." I had to convert my wife to just use Chat GPT. And then she started telling me when the updates were coming, and I'm like, oh, okay, now you're the expert here. And so I've recently got her on Claude because of the exact things that you're talking about. So,
That's nice that you just said that because I was just about to ask you, as an expert in this area, what's your favorite um, large language model? Like, which one do you prefer the best?
yeah, I would say it depends on what I'm trying to do.
Okay.
Much like you, if I want to do something technical or have it analyze some data, Claude is
Mhm.
wonderful, especially with Claude Cowork now and the ability to do some complex tasks. I do use it to help me with content because I think it writes in a more natural way, and I can feed in what my tone of voice is and my point of view, and I can get back something that sounds more like me. I would say for up to date information, uh, Grok and Perplexity are very good. Perplexity also shows you the links and where it got that information from. And so you can click through and follow those links. I'm a huge fan of Gemini's Nano Banana for image creation. The videos that Gemini puts out by VO3 are, I mean, it's amazing each and every week. It gets better and better. I would say I have not played around with Copilot as much, uh, but I just kind of have to try them all and see what their personalities are and figure out I'm going to try to do this. And if it doesn't work, I know it's probably not right for that. And then you wait 6 months and, somebody else is going to improve with a new release or update. So it's an exciting time for sure.
Hmm. So, Jimmy, ChatGPT, I believe they were the first large language model, yes?
I would say the first in the public
In
view
the
that,
public space.
right,
Okay. So if let's say they're the first in the public space and they want the first to be the most popular, and
right,
they previewed, if from memory, I believe it would have been somewhere around the latter part of 2022.
right,
Am I right?
like November-ish.
Okay. Right. Okay. We're now in 2026. So that's almost 4 years in. You're in this business. I mean, you've seen different platforms pop up, and of course, the newer ones tend to have features that are better than the older ones. If you were to, let's say I'm gonna make you a genie, right? And you can like predict the future.
All right. I didn't know
And
that was
you
going to
were to
happen
kind of
today,
look in
Yannick.
your little crystal ball and tell us, like what could we possibly expect more, to come out of these platforms. Just, I mean, I believe in imagination and dreaming and thinking big. So if you were to dream and think big, what do you see coming out of this, like let's say another 5 years from now? What more do you think these models will be able to do and help us do in our daily lives?
Yeah. And I would say there are some hints of that are going on right now. Uh, Probably purchases done through these platforms, which is a whole nother issue with the way people sell goods and services, to be able to have that large language model do that work. The other thing that I think sounds scary to some, but once it happens in a smooth way, they'll be hooked, is the whole world of the agentic helper that goes and does these tasks for you and manages your calendar and replies to emails. And, um, I think there's a fear that the robots are going to take over, but we still have to guide the robots, right?
Yep.
And so I think about my wife, who's very organized. And when I say that 60% of Google searches don't end in a click, well, right now there are AI agents visiting your site to learn about your business so that it can determine whether you're included in the conversation about what somebody's having on one of those platforms, right? And so if
Hmm.
they're already visiting your site, the next stage is going to be for them to do some actions. So let's imagine you want to book a trip, and these AI models are very smart. They're dumb, but they're smart. It's sort of a contradiction there. They work off the predictability. They really don't know anything. They just work off the highest probability of what the answer they believe you're looking for is. And so they're
Mm-hmm.
evaluating all these various options. And
Mm-hmm.
so, Yannick, if you were going to take a trip and I was going to take a trip,
Mm-hmm.
because of our behavior, it's going to plan two different trips, right? Now, certainly we can tell it what we would prefer. Maybe there's types of restaurants that you prefer that are different from mine. You could basically give one of these tools an assignment, and it could go book your flights, it could go book your hotel stays, it could go book your restaurants, it could book your tour packages, it would have access to your banking information. Um, I would say there's some early adopters who are chomping at the bit for that to happen. And then there's probably people that are like, no way, I will never let that happen. Um, and I would say it's probably generational, as we move through the different age groups and their comfort level. But um, I would say those are the things that I see on the horizon. Um, is that a good picture or a bad picture for
Yeah,
you?
it's almost like it's almost like you have your own personal assistant that
Yep.
they are reading your mind and they can
Mhm.
know exactly what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, how you're going to do it, and they just update you on how your day is going to be. Which begs me to wonder, does it make us lazier in the end, or do we use that free time now that we've had that we're not applying to those rote tasks, to more creative work, as human beings, to do things that will create greater value, or create greater connection with each other, because we don't have to be doing those repetitive activities that the agentic will be doing on our behalf. So it just makes me think.
I have that thought every day, and I wonder if I'm turning over my brain or not. And so I try to stay creative. But I'll tell you an example of something that happened with me. And we talked about Claude. I was working in Claude, and I was putting together a schedule of some content that I needed to produce, and I wanted to stay on track with that. And all of a sudden it came up and it said, Jimmy, you're speaking at an event next week in Savannah, Georgia. Are you sure you want to commit to this deadline, because you have this speaking uh, function that you're going to be at, and perhaps we need to widen this? And that part of my schedule was nowhere in that relevant chat, but it already knew that I was committed to go to this event. And I
Wow.
was kind of surprised. And then I was a little bit excited to, like, hey, you saved my back. I didn't commit to that deadline because you knew my schedule. And so, yeah, I would say those are the things that are fun to discover. And we just have to keep it in check. And,
Yeah.
there's some people that love planning a trip and they would never want somebody else to do it. And then there's other
Hmm.
people, like you said, well, this is more administrative and transactional, and gee, imagine all of the things that I could do if I didn't have to worry about spending time on that. So,
Yeah, yeah, agreed. Totally agreed. All right. Now, Jimmy, one of the things that we like to ask our guests is if you could choose, and I mean, I guess you could choose AI, but I mean, you could always choose a resource that's not AI related. But what's the one online resource, tool, website, or application that you absolutely cannot live without in your own business?
this is going to be a weird answer, but I, as a creative director, was on many, many, many photo shoots, video shoots, um, directing the activities that were going on with the client. And so I made a decision because I saw the world of video changing online that I wanted to learn how to be in front of the camera. And so I tested lighting, I tested camera, I tested all these things. I posted 147 videos to LinkedIn last year. I posted
Wow.
220 videos to YouTube. And so I would say if you took away my camera and you took away my video editing software, I would feel handcuffed to not be able to put out content, because I feel that's the way people want to consume things these days. And, speaking of AI, for those of you who are thinking about doing video, AI actually scrapes the transcripts of YouTube, which can provide a lot of credibility for businesses and business owners. And so I would encourage folks to investigate that.
All right. And when you say they scrape the transcripts of YouTube, could you break that down for us?
Yeah. So when you post a video on YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
um, because people want to see perhaps the closed captioning, or they want the subtitles to show up, it will
Right.
actually listen to that video and it will transcribe that video so that it has that text available.
Right.
And AI cannot watch a video, but they can read the transcript of what that video is about.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're teaching something on YouTube related to your business, and you have a nice catalog of videos for your business, then that is a huge place that these large language models go to look for information to establish credibility, authority, trustworthiness. I would say LinkedIn is also up there. LinkedIn is actually number 2 at this point. So if you have not posted on LinkedIn or done anything on LinkedIn, dust off your profile, because only 2% of people on LinkedIn, that's 2 billion people. So only 2% of that 2 billion actually ever post anything. But it's looking on LinkedIn, it's looking on YouTube, it's looking in a variety of places so that it can figure out who you are, which is different than the way a Google organic search happens. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Boy, things are really changing.
mhm.
All right, so that would be your video equipment and your camera. Total fish
Yes.
out of water if you were to lose those two tools. All right, so our next question for you is, I'm sure you've been read many, many books in your lifetime, and we're asking if there's maybe one or two that you've read that has had a really good impact on you. It could have been a book that you read a very long time ago, or even one that you've read recently.
Yeah. I would say it's funny because talking about speaking, I actually did a speech based on Jonathan Livingston Seagull by Jonathan Bach. And it was about this seagull who, he was tired of scrabbling after fish heads and he wanted to learn how to fly. And so he practiced and, you know, was faster than any gull around. And he, went to the leaders of his flock and he said, wow, look what I've discovered. If I pull my wings in and I duck my head, I can fly faster. And they sort of shunned him because they're like, no, that's not how a seagull is supposed to behave. And so I
Right.
think that just sort of stuck with me because you can write your own script and you can be contrarian if you really want to pursue greatness. And so that was a book that hit me early on. It sort of gave me permission to sort of think outside the box. And um, that's a cool one. There's another book that Jeremy Cowart, Cowart, wrote. It's called I'm Possible. But if you squish it all together, it reads as impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And so he is a photographer, but he's a huge philanthropist, social consciousness, uh, not just sit on the sidelines. Like you read that book and you're humbled to go, oh my gosh. He started out as a photographer, but he has got his hands in so many things helping people around the world. I thought, wow, now that's really a person that looks outside of himself and figures out how can he impact his community. And then he activates people to get on board with doing it with him. And so it's a great read. Yeah, I would recommend that one for sure.
All right, awesome. Okay, thank you so much for sharing, Jimmy. We'll definitely have those two books in the show notes of our episode so our listeners can tap into those awesome resources.
Great.
Now, Jimmy, can you share with us what's the one thing that's going on in your life right now that you're really excited about? Either something you're working on to develop yourself or your people.
Yeah. So one of the things that happened to me, we started to see the writing on the wall with how AI was looking for people instead of logos, because people are, the lifeblood of an organization, and their experience and the things that they bring to that organization make it what it is. And so our founder came to me about 18 months ago and said, yeah, we've been around for 20 years and I've never, we haven't really done a lot of PR. We just do good work and we get it done, but we need to have a face of the company. And so he tasked me with that role. And so that's what I've been doing for about the last year and a half. And I did a lot of things last year. You mentioned in the intro that I was on 70 plus podcasts. I started tracking what was working and what wasn't working. And I thought, let me do some more research. And so I actually just finished a research report for Q1 of 2026 that looks at the impact of 400 companies across 5 different industries. And what happens if that company is invisible to AI? What happens if that owner is invisible to AI? And what does that mean from a revenue perspective? And so I think we're in this window of time where personal branding used to be sort of a fluffy, nice to have, not really important, to where it's mandatory at this point because people want to know who's behind the organization. Now, it doesn't have to be the owner. It can be a subject matter expert. I'm not the founder or the owner of Thrive, but somebody in the organization needs to step out. And so I'm passionate about getting this information out there because the difference between being visible to AI and invisible is millions of dollars in revenue. And so I think that's what is missing when people look at these AI tools and they go, oh, it'll help me write emails. Oh, it'll help me write a report. Yeah, but you also need to be visible to these platforms so that you don't get left in the dust as things progress over the next few years.
All right. Excellent. Excellent tips. All right. Now, our listeners would have tapped into this episode, Jimmy, and they're quite intrigued with your organization. They're quite intrigued with you, and they would like to follow you on your journey. They'd like to connect with you online. Where's the best place that they can find you online?
Now, I know all they want, because I'm a genie, is they want 3 wishes, right, Yanique?
Yes, you're the genie. You're going to give them their wish, and it's going to
That's right.
be realized with immediate effect.
That's right. Oh, if only. Well, as I mentioned, LinkedIn is a place that everybody should be on because of the reasons I mentioned. So I post on there 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. Offer a lot of tips. Would love for people to connect with me there. Be happy to, if you DM me and have a question about anything we talked about, would be happy to give you some more information. And then Thrive Internet Marketing Agency is just thriveagency.com. Got a lot of information on there as well. And if anybody needs help navigating all this AI craziness, we'll be happy to chat.
All right, awesome. Now, before we wrap our episodes up, we always like to ask our guests, do you have a quote or a saying that in times of adversity or challenge, you'll tend to revert to this quote? If for any reason you get derailed or you get off track, the quote kind of helps to get you back on track. Do you have one of those?
Yeah, I would say it comes from Proverbs, and it's pride cometh before the fall. And so whenever I start thinking about me and what I can do, I go, yeah, that's a recipe for a disaster. I need to look to the team and I need to look at other people and I need to deflect things away from me so that I don't become consumed with trying to be the star. So I would say that's something I always think about and keeps me in check.
All right, awesome. And from the good book, the Bible,
Yes.
love it. All right, well, thank you so much, Jimmy, for taking time out of your very busy schedule and hopping on our podcast, sharing these amazing insights, as it relates to AI search optimization. Did I get that term correct?
Yeah, I would say there's two terms: answer engine optimization and generative engine optimization. So it's a mouthful.
Ah, wow. So basically, not using traditional SEO, but
Right.
AI is the tool, or the channel or the vehicle by which the optimization is being created or navigated. And so I found the conversation quite interesting. Even as a business owner myself, just listening to you speak, I'm just thinking about different ways that I can utilize this new method to get a better understanding of how I can, optimize myself to be seen more, seeing that that's how the search process is being done now and less in the traditional way that we're accustomed to. So I found it very insightful. I know our listeners will. This is something that we all need to be very curious and inquisitive about, because as Jimmy would have mentioned, it is the way how things are going, and we don't want to be left behind. So we want to be able to be knowledgeable, ensure that we know how to use the tools and that we're maximizing them to the best of our abilities to ensure that we're creating great results, so that our businesses can grow and we can create better value for our customers. So I really enjoyed our conversation. I hope you did too. And I just want to express my deepest gratitude.
Absolutely. It was a lot of fun. And I will encourage the listeners that the bar is very low. So if you do something, you're probably going to beat out the folks who are just sitting on the sidelines not doing anything. So,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. All right, awesome. Well, just want to remind our listeners that you can follow us on X at Navigating CX or join our private Facebook group, Navigating the Customer Experience Community. Until next time, I'm your host, Yanique Grant. All right, Jimmy, thank you so much.
Thanks for listening. For more awesome resources to take your customer service game to another level, head over to navigatingthecustomerexperience.com. See you next time.